Amor, amor, amore, ishq, pyar, mohabbat, Liebe, le but, love. For many of us, it's what makes the world go round. Welcome back to the Self-Soothing series. And as is the focus of this channel for year 7, we are going to talk today about love. But I'm single, you might say. How can this be a self-soothing tip for me? Well, there are two sides to love. The first is to be loved, and that's a lovely feeling we can all associate with childhood. But there's also the other side of love, which is to love. And that comes from within. That wonderful feeling as adults that we feel when we feel love is not dependent on the outside world. It comes from our own hearts. So today I'd like to talk to you about the ways in which love can be self-soothing at this difficult time. We're going to talk about love in 4 different contexts. We're going to talk about relational love, whether that's between friends or family or our significant other. And we're going to talk about love of self. We're also going to talk about love of community and the spiritual aspect of love. So to start off, we'll begin with relational love. During pandemic times, it is no secret that there is a strain on many relationships because we are having to be in close quarters with one another and spending a lot more time with one another than we are used to. And at this time, there are high statistics of relational breakdown. There's also indications of abuse in the home. And if you're facing any of that, then I suggest that you look at the links in my description box and reach out where you need to. For couples, there are a lot of good resources out on the internet to help work through difficult times in relationships, and I'll link a few in the description box below. We've heard a lot about the strain and stress on parents who have to take on additional responsibilities of homeschooling their children in addition to working from home and keeping the house in order. But it's important to also remember that the children are experiencing a really difficult time through this pandemic, losing out on their social circles. And sometimes when different parents will allow different things, children can experience a real sense of fear of missing out. And so it's important to remember that everyone is having a difficult time in this pandemic. And there are resources online that can help families to work together. And I'll link a few of them in the description box below. As for friends, I've heard a lot of people say that they have actually found that this time has made them reach out more than they would have before. Relationships, however, were first shown by the British researcher Bowlby to be beneficial to individuals' life expectancy as well as their mental health. Relationships help to decrease anxiety and depression through social support. Of course, falling in love increases the dopamine levels and our feel-good hormones. It also, in the beginning, increases the stressors and the stress hormones. But over the long haul, we begin to settle down, and the benefits of relationship and romantic partnerships take hold. The mental health benefits of physical intimacy are well known. And in fact, it's been shown that infants who are deprived of touch fail to thrive and may even be at higher risk of mortality. So as adults, when we don't have that physical intimacy with another person, we feel it emotionally. There's no getting around the fact that this has been a difficult time for those of us who are single. And whether you date organically or you use dating apps, there is not the opportunity to meet strangers that there once was. At the same time, there is a natural human wish in the face of death to do something that is life-affirming, like have sex. And this is why, perhaps, we're seeing a real spike in cases here in Canada among young people. Perhaps this is also an opportunity for those of us who are single to slow down our dating life and to take time to really get to know one another at a little bit of a social distance before we hop into the sack. Of course, touch deprivation is a real problem for those of us who are single, but there are ways that we can compensate. The love and affection of a pet, the use of a weighted blanket, self massage, exercise to increase the level of feel good hormones, and we can always choose to love the one you're with. Now, that takes us to the topic of self love. And I'd like to discuss three aspects of self love today: self esteem, self care, and self compassion. The UK charity Mind has a very good description of what self esteem involves, and I'll link that in the description box below. But during this pandemic time, we may have felt our self esteem suffering because we've lost our job and therefore a definition of who we are, or we're unable to get the love, affection, and ego strokes that we would get from external validation. And so now is a time to really focus on building our self esteem. And how can we do that? It begins with self care. Carolyn Baines is a positive psychologist who has written about self care, and she recommends that in times like these that are challenging, where we might be feeling anger or depression or anxiety, that we go back to the basics of self care and start there. So, if we're feeling like we've lost a little bit of our identity or our self esteem has taken a hit because we've lost our job, then it's really important to build ourselves up by thinking about three things every day that we can do for ourselves, something that is really achievable, and then to do them and to make note of them and feel proud about them. She also recommends that we look at three good things about ourselves every day, and that will help to generate good feelings of self esteem. If we're missing the ego strokes and the benefits of our social circle, then I think one of the best things we can do is to be grateful every day. Sometimes even basic self care can be very difficult. And that's where self compassion is so important. Professor Kristen Neff outlines three elements of self compassion that are important for us to practice. The first is to be kind to ourselves in the face of our own pain or perhaps our own failures. The second is to appreciate our place in the world and to realize that what we're going through is something that many people have gone through, and we are not alone in that. And the third part of self compassion is to practice mindfulness so that we can sit with our difficult feelings and know that they exist but are not the entirety of our being. One of the most important practices of self compassion is to listen carefully to our inner dialogue. How are we speaking to ourselves? When we're being hard on ourselves, can we turn that around and ask ourselves, what do you need right now? And then can we give it to ourselves? Professor Kristen Neff and her colleague Chris Germer did some research, and they found that over an 8-week period of practicing mindful self compassion, the individual's self compassion increased by at least 50%. Now, self compassion is something that was found to increase our resilience during difficult times. And so it's something that I think right now would be a really important tool for everyone to be practicing. Professor Neff and Dr. Helen Wang both offer some free tools and practices that I will link in the description box below. I hope that you will practice self compassion in the days, weeks, and months to come. Now that we have tools to love ourselves, to love our friends, our family, and our lovers, we can take the love that we're developing in our hearts and share it with our community. There are research studies that show that altruism benefits the giver. It increases our happiness and even can increase our life expectancy. You might be surprised to know that even imagining ourselves giving of our time or money actually benefits us, though the benefits increase with practice. You might also be surprised to find that even small acts of kindness produce really large benefits in the happiness of the individual who is giving. And the final self soothing tip around love is that love as a spiritual practice can bring great comfort in difficult times. There are in the Vedanta 4 types of individuals and 4 spiritual paths to match those individuals. There are those who reach the divine through giving acts of service and giving up the results of that service to God. That is the karma path. There are those who need to seek God through understanding intellectually the difference between what is real and what is unreal. And that is called the jnana path. There are those who seek God through meditation, through the raja path. And then there are those of us who seek God through devotion, through prayer, and through love. And we are the bhaktans. There are ways that we can bring love into any spiritual path. With the bhaktans, there is singing and prayer and devotion. With the karma yogis who are giving service, we can serve from the heart. And for those jnana yogis who need to understand real from unreal, this can be done with compassion. And finally, for those who seek God through meditation, there is the meditation of the heart. And of course, love can be at the center of any spiritual path. If you're a Christian, wasn't Jesus really all about love? If you're a Muslim, isn't love the center of your practice? If you're a Hindu, there is the Bhaktan path. If you're a Buddhist, the Bodhisattva practices great compassion by giving up freedom from liberation from rebirth in order to stay and show the way to others. I'll leave a link in the description box to one particular meditation on the heart, but there are many out there. And simply put, we can simply just focus on the heart and the love that we feel in there, and then imagine that we are sending that out into the world. I promise you that if you do this meditation long enough, you will really come to understand that love comes from within. It doesn't depend on anyone else. I hope that you'll find that these techniques and practices will bring a little comfort into your life. There is to me nothing more comforting than to love. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see the rest of this series, then click subscribe. And if you hit the bell icon, you'll be notified when I upload again. For what are you most grateful today?